Hi everyone, Suzanne here. I hope you're all well and welcome to Sew Custom. Today I'm uploading two videos. The first, this one, is how I patterned this little number, and the second is how I sewed it up. I shall leave that linked below, but if you're interested in seeing how I patterned it, then let's get started.
I'm using my petticoat block here, and you can see it's quite a long block. It's about knee length. And because of my camera setup, and I want you guys to be able to see, I'm just tracing from the hip up. So I leave the bottom part of the skirt until later on, so I'll come back to that. But for now, as I say, I'm just tracing from the hip upwards. I'm making sure that I'm popping in all of my markings. So I've got the points of my dart, my bust line, my under bust line, my waist, and I'm drawing in here my hip line, drawing in my dart legs, so that's my waist dart, onto my shoulder dart, my bust line, under bust line, my upper and lower waist. So to start the patterning, I want to enlarge the neck just slightly. So I'm measuring down on the centre front neck point 1 centimetre and on the shoulder neck point 1 centimetre and removing that. Using my hip curve to draw in a nice new neckline. And now I want to mark in my new dart position. So I'm just measuring down from the underarm point 6 1/4 inches, and then measuring down from the under bust point 3 1/2 inches, and then drawing a line from the apex to that 6 1/4 inch mark. That's going to be my new dart line. And then on that line, I'm going to measure from the apex 3 1/2 inches down. The pattern I'm trying to create here has a nice curve just above the waist, so that's the bit I'm trying to create here. So from the dart line at that 3 1/2 inch mark, I'm using my hip curve to draw a nice smooth curve down to that 3 1/2 inch mark on the centre front. I'm now going to remove the bottom part of the pattern. As I say, that'll be my skirt, and I'll come back to that later. So now to finish the front bodice. So I want to move the shoulder dart to that new dart position you seen me draw earlier. So to do that, I'm cutting through one of the dart legs on the shoulder. I'm then giving myself a little hinge there by opening up the new dart position, and then laying one dart leg over the other at the shoulder. And what that does is open up that little gap, which will give me my new dart. And I need to do exactly the same thing with that little bit of a waist dart that I have left. So cutting through one of the dart legs, laying it over the top of the other, and opening up that new dart position. And once I'm happy, everything is nice and flat, sticking everything down. So I've just popped some fresh paper underneath my pattern piece, and now I want to correct that little jagged edge that I have. So I'm using my hip curve and just smoothing off that line that was created whenever I closed up that waist dart. So to complete this pattern piece, I just need to add my seam allowance and label. So I've went ahead and added my seam allowance here. I have a couple of notches at the top and bottom of my centre front. This is my Vogue 60s style dress, or my version of it. This is my front bodice, and I shall cut one on the fold. So now back to the skirt. So I'm just laying my block over the top of that little bit of skirt pattern you seen me pattern earlier, and I'm just finishing off that bottom piece, so from the hip down. And now I just want to deal with the dart here on the skirt. So I want to distribute the width of that dart between the centre front seam and the side seam. So all I'm doing is just measuring the width of that dart. I'm going to divide each of those measurements by 3, and I'm going to put 2/3 to the centre front and 1/3 to the side seam. So that's what I'm doing here, just giving myself a little mark at each of those points. And then I'm just going to connect the dots. So I'm going to shave the centre front seam and the side seam, and that will eliminate the need for that dart in the centre. So just drawing a line from the points I've marked at the waist to the hip, and then from the waist up to the cut edge. So that's my dart now completely moved into the centre front and the side seam. So now to finish off this pattern piece, I just want to lengthen the skirt. So I'm adding 6 inches to the hem the whole way across. And then the last thing I have to do here is just give myself some seam allowance the whole way around. So that's my seam allowance added. I've added a 1-inch hem allowance there as well, and just labelling. So this is my 60s style dress, my front skirt, and I shall cut 2. And now on to the back. So doing the same thing here again, tracing my petticoat block back this time, and I'm tracing from the hip up. Making sure again that I'm putting in all of my markings, points of my dart, adding in my hip line, my waist dart, upper and lower waist, under bust and bust line. And now measuring down from the bust line 3 inches, and I'm just going to use my hip curve to draw a nice smooth curve from the underarm point to that 3-inch mark. And then I'm going to take that same 1 centimetre I took off the front neck, off the back here. And then measuring down the side seam 6 1/4 inches, the same as I did on the front. And then just straightening off from that point to the centre back. And now I just want to separate, I have 3 pieces here, so you can see top of the bodice, waist piece, and then my skirt piece. So I'm going to set the waist piece and the skirt piece aside for now and just work on the bodice. So I want to do the same thing here as I did on the front. I want to remove that little piece of dart from the centre to the centre back. So I've just measured the width of that dart at the cut edge. I've measured in from the centre back that same distance, and then drawn myself a line from that point to the centre back seam. So that's all the patterning required on this piece. I just need to add my 1 centimetre seam allowance the whole way around, and to label. So this is my back bodice, and I shall cut 2. So now on to the skirt. So I'm doing the same thing here as I did on the front. So I've just laid my block on top of my pattern piece, and I'm just going to extend it to the full length of the block. So from the hip down, and that's my tracing complete. And now the same thing with this dart as I did on the front. So I'm just going to measure at the cut edge. I'm going to measure at the waist. I'm going to divide both of those measurements by 3, and I'm going to place 2/3 at the centre front and 1/3 at the side seam. And I'm going to do that at the cut edge and at the waist. give myself a little mark at each of those measurements, and then just to connect the lines. So drawing a line from the cut edge to the waist mark, and then from the waist mark to the hip. On both sides, centre back and side seam. So that's my dart removed on my back, and now just to lengthen the skirt in the same way as I did on the front. So 6 inches here as well, the whole way across. And then to complete this pattern piece, I just need to add my 1 centimetre seam allowance the whole way around and a 1 inch hem allowance. So that's that done. Just to label, so this is my version of the Vogue 60 style dress, and I shall be cutting 2. And now for that little waist piece. So I want to close up the dart, or that little portion of the dart anyway. So I'm just cutting through one of the dart legs the whole way through. I'm laying the cut edge on top of my other dart leg, and once I'm happy everything's flat, sticking in place, and closing up that dart leaves me with that little jagged edge at the top. I don't want that jagged edge, so I'm just going to smooth it off by eye, and then to complete this pattern piece I just need a 1 centimetre seam allowance the whole way around, and to label. So this is my back waist, and I shall cut 2. So that completes the pattern for the outer. So I have my front and back bodice here, my back I have that little waist piece, my dart has been removed and I've shaped the neck. My front I have it cut on the fold, I have that beautiful French dart, that lovely bit of shaping at the waist and the neck nicely shaped. And then my 2 skirt pieces. So on my front I've got that lovely bit of shaping up around the waist. My dart has been removed. Same thing on the back, my dart has been removed. My seam allowance all around and my hem allowance. And then off camera I just traced off my front bodice and my back bodice to make my lining pieces. And from both of those pieces I gave myself a little bit of facing. I've showed how to do this in previous videos, which I shall link down below. It's super quick and super easy to do. But this is my lining and my facing for my front and back bodice, and I shall just use the skirt pattern pieces I've just shown for the lining also. And once that pattern is sewn up, this is how it looks. So it has those gorgeous French darts at the front, that lovely bit of shaping to the waist, beautiful A-line shape and that nice waist piece at the back. And if you want to see how I sewed this up, check the description box below where I shall have that video linked.
So I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you found it useful. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you've not yet subscribed, please do, and I shall see you in my next one. Bye folks!